With the release of Palworld 1.0, we have a lot of new pals that could potentially replace some of the old Best Base Pals. Today, I'm going to test them against the previous Best Base Pals to find out which ones are actually the best, because even if two pals have the same stats on paper, their AI, animations and work cycles can make a huge difference in production. Before testing each pal, I want to explain the setup. Each test lasted 3 in-game days, starting when the Lambo wakes up and ending after the exact same amount of time has passed. For this test I used 3 Shroomer both wave generators and the new Ancient Clinic. This allowed me to run all my tests using super hard work mode, giving every pal the maximum possibility work speed. For food, every pal was given Mozzarella hamburger, which provides a plus 50 work speed bonus. Every pal was tested 3 times under the exact same conditions, and the winner was decided based on their average production. Starting with kindling, the first pal I tested was Incineram. Across 3 tests, Incineram produced an average of 12,102 ingots. One interesting thing I noticed was that Incineram would always stop working to eat when its sand dropped to 86%. Because of this, Incineram would lose its food buff while travelling to eat, having no food buff downtime. Next up is Majex. Across 3 tests, Majex produced an average of 11,785 ingots. Unlike Incineram, Majex would eat when its sand dropped to 91%, meaning it was able to maintain its food buff throughout the entire test. Majex was unable to match Incineram's overall production. Finally, we have Lumen. Lumen also produced an average of 11,785 ingots, making it almost identical to Majex. The only difference was that Lumen would eat slightly later when its sand dropped to 90%. Just like Majex, it was able to maintain its food buff throughout the test. After testing all 3 kindling pals, the results were actually closer than I expected. Despite losing its food buff while travelling to eat, Incineram still produced more resources than both of the new 1.0 pals. With an average production increase of 2.69%, Incineram remains the best kindling pal for an endgame base. Moving on to cooling, we have Van Wormkrist, which was the best cooling pal before the 1.0 update. Across 3 tests, Van Wormkrist produced an average of 11,714 resources. Van Wormkrist would consistently eat when its sand dropped to 84%. However, it would lose its food buff when its sanity was at 86%. Next up is Smoky Crisp. Across 3 tests, Smoky Crisp produced an average of 11,485 resources. Smoky Crisp behaved very similar to Van Wormkrist, but its overall production was slightly lower across all 3 tests. After averaging all 3 tests, Van Wormkrist came out ahead. Van Wormkrist produced around 2% more resources than Smoky Crisp, making it the best cooling pal for an endgame base. Moving on to medical production, we have a lot of new pals competing against each other. Starting with Venusa. Across 3 tests, Venusa produced an average of 8,483 resources. Venusa would always eat when its sanity dropped to 86%. However, Venusa would lose its food buff when its san reached 88%, meaning it was not able to maintain the bonus throughout the entire test. Next up is Lumen. Across 3 tests, Lumen produced an average of 8,535 resources. Lumen would eat when its san dropped to 91%. Unlike Venusa, Lumen never lost its food buff during the test, allowing it to maintain the bonus throughout the entire 3-day period. Next is Wistella. Across 3 tests, Wistella produced an average of 8,735 resources. Wistella would eat when its san dropped to 88%. However, Wistella would lose its food buff when travelling to eat, so it had no downtime. Next up is Bake Me. Across 3 tests, Bake Me produced an average of 8,396 resources. Bake Me would eat when its san dropped to 85%. Despite eating the least frequently out of all the tested pals with only 6 meals during the test, Bake Me would still lose its food buff when its san reached 88%. Next is Bellanor. Across 3 tests, Bellanor produced an average of 8,612 resources. Bellanor would eat when its san dropped to 91%. It never lost its food buff during the test, allowing it to maintain the bonus throughout the entire 3-day period. Next up is Dandylord. Across 3 tests, Dandylord produced an average of 8,592 resources. Dandylord would eat when its san dropped to 93%. It also never lost its food buff during the test, allowing it to keep the work speed bonus active. Next is Majex. Across 3 tests, Majex produced an average of 8,588 resources. Majex would eat when its san dropped to 92%. Just like Dandelion, Majex never lost its food buff during the test. Next up is Whisper. Across 3 tests, Whisper produced an average of 8,626 resources. Whisper would eat when its sand dropped to 90%. It never lost its food buff during the test, allowing it to maintain a bonus throughout the entire 3 days. Finally, we have Gildra. Across 3 tests, Gildra produced an average of 8,689 resources. Gildra would eat when its sand dropped to 90%. It also never lost its food buff during the test, allowing it to maintain the work speed bonus. After averaging all 3 tests, the results were much closer than I expected. The top performers were extremely close, with only a small difference separating the highest producing pals. Wistella produced an average of 8,735 resources, making it the best medical production pal tested. However, Gildra was extremely close behind, only producing around 46 fewer resources on average. At the end of the result, Bikini produced the lowest amount, finishing around 4% behind Wistella. This makes Wistella the best medical producing pal in the game. With all the new pals tested, here's the best base pals for every single work suitability skill. So, for kindling we have Incineram. For watering we have Gelroy and Jelliet for the bonus partner skill. You only need 1 Jelliet, so the rest can be Gelroys when needing multiple watering pals. For planting and gathering we have Prunelia for her partner skill, however when planting orchard trees Lulu is also the best as she decreases the time it takes for the crops to grow. For generating electricity we have Dazzy Noct. For handiwork and mining, we have the Alpha Sekhmet due to her broken partner skill, no Anubis needed. For lumbering, we have Shrumanoct again for its partner skill. For medicine production, we now have Wistella. For cooling, we have Vanwerf Christ. And finally, for transporting, we have Hydralon. I know a lot of players want my world download, so later today my world will become downloadable for Palworld 1.0, allowing you to obtain all my bases, resources, and pals. With that being said, it's been your boy Trops, and I'll catch you in the next one.